Today, we're diving into a classic Buddhist parable. And let me tell you, this one is going to make you question everything you think you know about good and evil. It's a wild story from the Gandhavyuha Sutra that really challenges us to look beyond what's right in front of our faces.
All right, let's just jump right into the deep end. Here's the central question. What if the most brutal, just terrifying tyrant you could ever imagine was actually a saint? Yeah, I know, it sounds like a total paradox, right? A complete contradiction. But that's exactly the mystery we're going to unravel today. Okay, so our story starts with a classic noble quest. Let's meet our main guy, a young and super earnest pilgrim named Sudhana. He's on this epic journey to find enlightenment, the whole deal. And after traveling for who knows how long, he finally makes it to his destination, a city called Taradvaja. So you might be wondering, why this specific city? Well, it's because Sudhana's heard all these incredible stories about its ruler, King Anala. The word on the street is that this king is a great teacher, like a guide for all living things. Sudhana is totally convinced this is the guy who can teach him the true path of a bodhisattva. But when Sudhana finally gets to the king's court, it is nothing like he imagined, not even close. What he's about to see is this absolutely shocking scene where divine beauty and honestly just unspeakable cruelty crash into each other. Okay, so at first glance, King Ajala looks exactly like you'd expect an enlightened ruler to look. Sudhana sees him sitting on this golden throne wearing a crown made of wish-fulfilling jewels. I mean, come on. He's got sapphire earrings, priceless necklaces, this massive jeweled canopy over his head, and he's surrounded by like 10,000 ministers. The guy looks literally divine. And then, just like that perfect image completely shatters. Because right there, in front of this glorious, godlike king, the most horrific things are happening. People are being boiled in vats, skinned alive, limbs are being severed, eyes gouged out. It is a scene of just absolute carnage. So the question hits you immediately. How on earth can this divine-looking guy be sitting there presiding over all this brutality? And the original text does not pull any punches. It's incredibly vivid. It says the air is just filled with these agonizing screams, calling the whole scene a great hell on earth. Can you even imagine the shock and horror our poor pilgrim Sudhana is going through right now? So faced with this impossible contradiction, Sudhana just completely spirals. He's having a total crisis of faith. Everything he thought he knew about this supposedly wise King Anala is just gone. All he's left with is confusion and this incredibly deep disappointment. You can almost hear his thoughts racing, right? He's thinking, this king, he's just creating evil. How can I possibly seek wisdom from a guy who is the literal embodiment of cruelty? He's completely disillusioned. At this point, he's basically ready to just turn around and walk away. But just as he's about to give up and leave, something incredible happens. A voice, literally from the heavens, speaks to him. Now, it doesn't give him the answer, but it gives him a huge clue. It says, a bodhisattva's skillful means are inconceivable. This is our first big hint that maybe, just maybe, there's a lot more going on here than what it looks like. So, hearing that message from the heavens gives Sudhana just enough of a boost. He musters up his courage and actually approaches the king. And what happens next is pretty surprising. After the king is done with his court duties for the day, he takes Sudhana by the hand and personally invites him into his private palace, promising to reveal the truth. Okay, so once they're inside, everything changes. The palace is magnificent and totally peaceful. And that's when King Anrala drops this bombshell of a question on Sudhana. He basically says, hey kid, look at me. Look at my body, this incredible palace, all my good fortune. If I was really such an evil guy, how could I possibly have all of this as my karmic reward? And wow, that one question just flips the entire script. And here's where we get to the core of it all. It's this concept called skillful means. The king explains that what Sudhana saw, none of it was real. The punishments, the screams, all of it. It was an illusion, a performance. Think of it like a divine stage play, created out of pure compassion, all to stop people from causing actual harm to each other. When you break it down, the king's strategy is actually pretty genius. So first, he sees people in his kingdom doing bad things, stealing, hurting each other. Then, he uses his power to whip up this terrifying, but remember, totally fake,
illusion of punishment. And what's the goal? To scare them straight, to make them so afraid of the idea of evil that they voluntarily choose to live a good life, to follow what the text calls the 10 good paths. And this really brings us to the deep, profound lesson of the whole story. This isn't just about some clever magic trick. No, it's about having such a deep understanding of how reality works that you can use that knowledge to be compassionate in some really unconventional ways. And then we get the king's true nature, laid bare, in this incredibly powerful vow. He tells Sudhana, and get this, I would rather suffer endlessly myself than cause a moment's pain to a single mosquito or ant, let alone a human being. Wow, that's the real gut punch of the story. The guy who looked like a monster is actually so compassionate he wouldn't even hurt an ant. So you're probably asking, how can he even do this? Well, the text says the king has achieved something called illusory liberation. What does that mean? It means he gets that things are not always what they seem. He understands that our world, our reality, is kind of like a shadow, or maybe like a dream. And because he has that profound wisdom, he can play with that illusion for a greater good, all without causing a single bit of real suffering. And that brings us to the final, really challenging takeaway. This ancient story is basically asking us, you and me, if what we see with our own eyes could be a compassionate illusion, something created for a purpose we can't even begin to understand, then how can we ever be sure we aren't misjudging the world? How can we be sure we aren't misjudging the people around us just based on how things look on the surface?